Hello everyone. Hello, am I audible? Can you hear me? Okay, so we are talking about project manager and some qualities and responsibilities of project manager. I think we have discussed these points in the previous class. Okay, there are a few more challenges corresponding to the kind of responsibility and requirements in the qualities. You can see these are the various challenges a project manager will have to face. Management of team dynamics, as I said, managing human resource is most difficult part compared to other resources like machines, materials, or money. Management of team means you have a dedicated team under you for the project, and that has got some dynamics. Dynamics means, as I said, it happens like with time there may be some changes in the mindset of the people who are working under you. They may be influenced by some factors, or maybe groupism, or some sort of unrest or disturbance. So it is the responsibility of the project manager to understand this dynamics in the workforce or team and how to manage it, how to address, how to resolve it. So that is one of the challenges. And if he is not able to manage or control or resolve these kind of issues, then you can understand it will not going to happen for the project. Second is management of client relationships. Client are the persons or companies which are dealing with you regarding some kind of supplies or some kind of other consultancy relationships. So in large projects, there will be many such clients which will be associated with the project. Maybe they are the vendors or suppliers, or maybe they are providing manpower or providing some kind of other services, or maybe consultancies. So these are all clients to you. And now, again, at the head of the project, you need to maintain or kind of manage the healthy relationships with all these clients. It is also essential, and it is again a kind of managerial skill to properly negotiate, to properly held the interest of your own organization, at the same time maintaining a healthy relationship. So that is another challenge. Okay. So am I audible to you? Just making sure. Someone
yes,
please.
sir.
Okay, the next challenge is long working hour. As somebody has told me in the previous class, he has to work 24/7. He has to be punctual, right? So that is another challenge. So working long hours is also a challenge. It will have some toll on your health, on your family life, etc. High stress work environment, of course, it is also another challenge, that you are taking decisions which may involve a huge sum, and that creates the stress As I used to emphasize on this aspect of decision making. So what exactly you are doing? You are making some decisions continuously, and all these decisions will have some repercussions. Some are good, some are bad. So how you are handling that, and that creates the stress. Suppose you have made some decision and you are not sure about it. So obviously it will create some stress, that what will be the effect, what will be the repercussion, consequences, and that creates stress. So that is a challenge, of course. Ethical dilemmas. This is also very interesting point. When someone is in charge of something like a project, so time and again he will come across these kind of dilemmas, which are maybe ethical in nature. Let me give some possible examples for this kind of ethical dilemmas. Let us say regarding environment, right? Regarding environment, or maybe something from your project, you are having some for yourself that the kind of work you are doing is having some environmental effect for the people living nearby, maybe pollution or some kind of wastages that you are producing, and you are, affecting the nearby water bodies, etc. So here you know that it is going to affect, but at the same time you do not have any fund or maybe budget for its redressal or kind of treatment, right? So here you are under a kind of ethical dilemma, that you know that what you are doing is not a good thing, but at the same time, for the company's interest, or you may have some budget constraints, you are not able to address it. So it's a question of ethics again. Similarly, maybe regarding your workforce, you know somebody has made some accident during your project, and he has to be properly compensated, right? Because you know he has some problems and you need to help him as a person. But at the same time, maybe your company or project does not have that kind of policy. Let us say contractual workers. Somebody gets some accident and affected severely by some accident, but he was a contractual employee, and you don't have any policy, company policy or for your project, that you need to compensate him in some way. But ethically, you know that you are in the wrong side, but still you cannot help it. So there are many such situations you may come across, where you know by your heart that what you are doing is wrong, but for the sake of the project or your own organization, you may have to overlook it. It happens practically. So that is called ethical dilemmas. There are many such situations will happen in the career of a project manager. So that is impact on personal life. Okay. So these are some of the challenges which typical project manager may face. Okay. So again, to know a little bit more about the roles and responsibility of a project manager. So this slide you can just quickly go through. They're all linked, I think. So your responsibilities are some requirement analysis, planning, and budgeting, of course. Then decision making, as I used to emphasize on. Then standardizing the procedures, project work plan, and allocation of resources. Coordination with clients, vendors, team. Operational efficiency, quality control, and change management. Setting the work culture. Right? These are all self-explanatory. I don't think any explanation of this. But yes, you should know that as a project manager, what are the various responsibilities you are having. First of all, you will begin with your iron triangle of project management. From there also you can expand it, right? So the first and foremost role or responsibility of a project manager is to satisfy the constraints. There are four main constraints. We already have discussed it. So if you'll expand those constraints, you will be able to get all these activities. These activities are to fulfill or to achieve those constraints. The constraints like budget, the constraint of scope, constraint of schedule, and the constraint of quality, which is at the center of that triangle. So if you look at all these activities, they are in fact supplementing to that constraints. So you need a lot of plannings, budgetings, decision making. You have to standardize the procedure so that the best practice is adapted for your actions and activities. You have to allocate the resources. You have limited resources, so allocation of resource is a very big, challenge for the project manager. How to properly utilize your limited resources. You cannot just go on procuring new equipments or manpower or hiring manpower for your project. If you can properly utilize and distribute by proper allocation of your resources, that is the best possible solution. You just cannot purchase everything whenever you are in need. So that is the allocation of resources. Then, of course, you have to maintain the relationship with the stakeholders, the company who is funding the project, the clients who is going to purchase it, or depending on the type of project, of course. So the stakeholders, the clients, vendors, you have to maintain and coordinate relationship. Then comes things like setting the work culture. You have to improve the operational efficiency, quality, and change management. Team building, inspiring, motivating, rewarding, guiding the team, taking care of their growth in organization, and maintaining good team environment. So these are all good things a general manager or general management person can understand. It's nothing new for a project. Okay, then last point you can see that is called risk management. As I told you in the qualities of project manager, and the first point was vision. So that vision is related with this risk management. So how nicely you are anticipating the potential threats, that are the uncertainties or the risks that will come into the project in future. If you are able to foresee those kind of risk or that kind of uncertainties which are detrimental to your project, then maybe you are in better position because you have already plan B, plan C, like that. Otherwise, all of a sudden, if you are finding the risk or kind of threat, it is very difficult to find a solution until unless you are prepared earlier. Okay, so these are some of the responsibilities a project manager must have. I think we all can understand these are the common things. It's nothing new in it. Okay, there are a few more points regarding the responsibilities, like resilience, dealing with internal and external pressure, balancing between organizational goal, employee and client satisfaction, producing status report. You have to conduct team meetings, review meetings, look ahead meetings, getting approvals and feedback on deliverables, negotiations, recruitment, keeping up with new technology. Okay, so there are, diverse area of specialization a manager needs. He has to be master of all trades. As I said, even in the technology front also, he has to be up to date. Otherwise, if he does not know the recent developments in the technologies or kind of innovations that is happening around you, you may not be able to get the proper solution for the different type of problems. So you have to keep up with the new technology. Otherwise, even their own staffs may take him for a ride. There may be some requirement for the recruitment, means hiring for your project. Then that is also a challenge for you, how to recruit the right persons with the right skills and capabilities for your project. So that is also a task. Negotiations, of course, it happens among the various clients, and you have to be that kind of skill to negotiate for the best interest. So these are many such. Okay, there are some continuously. There will be some meetings, right? Most of the time, the project manager will be engaged in the meetings. Either it is for the team, or maybe some kind of review or progress status meeting. Or maybe look ahead meetings means look ahead meetings maybe is looking for the in kind of future risks or threats that can happen by changing regulations, or maybe say new budget came by government and certain things become costlier. So these things happen. Suppose a project is going to be completed within 2-3 years, right? So within that time there are many changes that will happen. You do not have any control. Like there will be 2-3 budgets from government within that time. There may be new regulations from the state or the government regarding the maybe pollution, or maybe forest acts, or maybe there are many such government regulations to which you are associated depending on the type of project, maybe regarding the taxes, maybe regarding the cost of materials. See, suddenly you will see that whatever you have budgeted for your plant, suppose the cost of steel, like your structural steel increased suddenly because of some taxes or government regulations. Now your whole budget calculation and all that will be affected, right? So what you have to do, this is a kind of risk, that happen to your project, because you have thought that the cost of material will be like this, but it has increased. So these things happen. Now how to accommodate that, to what extent you are able to accommodate that kind of increase in cost without increasing your budget, right? Or you have to ask for extra budget because the material cost has increased. So all these things has to be reviewed from time to time, and it needs a lot of meetings and brainstorming sessions among your stakeholders. It is also your responsibility as a project manager to produce status report from time to time, right? Status report, it is different than the completion report. A status report tells the stakeholder, means the organization or the company who is funding it or is interested as the client. So what is the status of the project? It has to be prepared in a report form. It's not in a verbal communication. It has to be prepared in a document form, and you have to produce what is the status of project, to what extent the work has been completed, what features and specifications have been covered as per the scope it is going or not, what extra time you need, or what kind of budget, is it as per the budget it is going on or not, what are the risks happening, what are the difficulties you are facing. So that is kind of status report, right? So there are many tasks, as you can see. The job of project manager is definitely not easy. Okay, now depending on the size of the project. Okay, so that we have covered, and that was regarding the project manager, particularly as a person, as a human being. What are the qualities, responsibilities, and what are the challenges a project manager faces? Now let me begin another new topic today, that is called project risk analysis, right? So by now you have understood that no matter how much you have planned, there will be risks and there will be threats, there will be disruptions. Now, it's also not possible to foresee all these kind of risks and disruptions beforehand. It's not possible at all. Now, it is up to you that if you can have some better planning, kind of better analysis beforehand to some extent, that if this thing happen, then we'll do like that. Some alternate, some plan B, plan C kind of thing. Then maybe it is easy for you to sail through compared to without plan. So in the project risk analysis, right, for a project, we need to understand that how this is done, right? And usually this is covered during the early stage of the project, maybe in the planning stage itself, before the implementation. And this process also continues during the project's, implementation stage, because in the implementation stage also, there is some changes that happen. So according to the change, you have to adapt yourself. So project risk analysis is a continuous affair which starts from the planning stage, not in the initiation stage, but from the planning stage, and it goes through the implementation stage, right? To a large extent of the implementation stage, you have to again review what are the risks coming and how to accommodate it, right? So that is basically the project risk analysis. And that is also divided into two categories. One is a kind of qualitative risk analysis. The other is quantitative risk analysis. Quantitative, of course, deals with numbers, figures, right? Amounts in terms of your money, right? Rupees or dollar. And qualitative is not involving any money, but it is just a kind of subjective discussion or subjective decision making, which is not supported by any kind of data, number data, right? It may be verbal data or any other data which are not in the number form, right? Qualitative. Okay, so that is project risk. So risk analysis is the process that figures out how likely that risk will arise in a project. It studies uncertainty and how it would impact the project in terms of schedule, quality, and costs, if in fact it was not so. Right? Two ways to analyze risk is quantitative and qualitative. But it is important to know that risk analysis is not an exact science. It is more like an act. As I said, just like forecasting, right? See, most of these projects or companies, they adopt the forecasting process, right? Till now, it is there. It was from a very long time back that once the business is there, there will be some use of forecasting techniques. Right? They need to see the market or their potential customers. So that is not an exact science, I'll say. Whatever methods you are using for forecast cannot be precise, cannot be certain. But we all try to make it as close to the reality as possible. Right? That is okay. But it can never be an exact science. It is always relying on some sort of either some trend or some sort of variation which is having a pattern, certain things like that. You are looking into the history and past, and based on that you are predicting the future. That is forecasting, be it demand forecasting or any other forecasting. Similarly, risk analysis is also using certain things like that. Hence, it will make use of some history or past happenings, right? Based on that, you can see that, okay, this time maybe there will be flood, right? Last 3 years, there is flood. I'm talking about some infrastructure project, which you are planning near some riverside, let us say. So how will predict that this year at this month, there will be a flood, so that you will plan accordingly. So you look into the past. You look into the past. Okay, for the last 3-4 years, at this time of the year, there is used to be flood, and the water level comes to be like this. So this year maybe, again it is maybe, right? But it has some probability. It has some probability. So you try to use sort of all these events that you are thinking will happen in terms of some probability. Right. Again, how accurate is that probability? You cannot say, right? But it helps definitely in making your plans and budgets and any kind of corrective actions that you can take. So it is not an exact science. It is more like an art. That's why. So in risk management, this risk engineering is a continuous process of balancing risk response strategies for different risks in the project. So if you have plans, if you have some certain strategies beforehand, that if these risks happen, then we'll do like this, then it is better compared to doing the steps instantly. It will be much better. Risk management is the overall process that project managers use to minimize and manage risk. It includes risk identification, risk assessment, risk response, and risk response control. Just look at these terms, you can understand. It starts with risk identification. First of all, you have to identify what are the risks, right? Again, for different projects, the risk can be of different nature, but you have to first identify that. Whether there is a risk like this, then what are those risks? So that is identification. Then you will assessment. Assessment means you will see what will be the effect of that. Suppose there is a flood, then what will be effect of that? You assess it. Again, it is not exact. It is a kind of estimate. No, we use the term estimate when we are not sure about the figure. So again, risk assessment is a kind of estimate that if flood is there, then what it is going to happen, affect to my project. Maybe there will be no work for 15 days. Maybe these areas will be submerged in water, so this damage will be done. So there is sort of assessment. That is risk assessment. Then you will also look into what is my response, what is my risk response, right? So if you can plan, again coming back to that flood example, suppose you have planned that if there is a flood, then we'll stop the project for 15 days. So when you have planned it that the project will be stopped for 15 days, that is beneficial for you because you have planned it earlier. So maybe temporary staffs you will not pay the salary for that duration. Or maybe certain advantages you will get because you have declared it that there will be 15 days no work kind of thing. Compared to suddenly if you are doing certain things, then there may be issues, there may be problems because you are not planned for it. So that is your response, right? That is your response. That if this risk happens and it has got this kind of effect or assessment, then this is my risk response. And finally, you can have a response control over it. Right? So these are, the risk management, project risk management is a very, interesting aspect of project management. And usually the project managers, which are having a lot of experience in handling that kind of projects, are in a better position to do all these things, all these steps like identification, assessment. So once somebody has done similar kind of projects and already have experience that what kind of risks may happen in these kind of projects, then they are better position, right? Compared to a new person who does not have any experience. I think the last point is also talking about that. Project managers who have some experience with risk management in projects are a great resource, of course. You'll find many engineering consultants, they used to claim that we have many experience of handling this kind of risk assessment, and they will provide you consultancy services because they claim that they have all these expertise in that. Okay, so they used to provide that service to the companies who are handling projects, and they need their help because they have experience of handling project risks. So these kind of things happen. Okay, so this is our project risk analysis. Now let us see what are the various techniques or approaches for this project risk analysis. Am I connected? Can you hear me? Okay. So the process of evaluating project risk begins in the planning stages, as I said. So what is the right stage in the project life cycle where you can start thinking about this? It's definitely not the first stage. That is just the initiation stage where you are just checking whether this project is feasible or not, right? So at that stage, you are not talking out risk actually. You have started talking out risk in the second stage, that is in the detailed planning stage, right? So that's why you can see here. Risk begins in the planning stages, but it must continue through every stage of the project. That's why I said during the implementation also, it is not only the planning stage in which you will do this risk assessment and analysis, because the actual risk happens in the implementation stage, right? So this risk analysis becomes a continuous affair thereafter, and from time to time you need to look at this risk analysis part or risk assessment part because from time to time newer kind of risks will come up. Okay, so both qualitative and quantitative risk analysis are used. Some analysis are qualitative, right? It is just subjective. Maybe in the boardroom itself, the stakeholders and the policymakers, including the project manager, will have certain brainstorming discussion. It is not supported by any kind of numerical tool or analytical tool or managerial tool which are quantitative in nature, right? Without that, they just, because see, they from their experience they know that if these things happen, then what we should. So most often in practice, these qualitative tools are very useful, because they may decide. Suppose there is sudden change in the government regulation, let us say, right? Or some changes happen in the tax structure or cost of some input materials that you are using in the recent budget, let us say, right? So what should be the action plan? They can brainstorm, they can find a solution in their boardroom itself, right? Because that is a risk. And depending on that, they will take some corrective measures or actions. So that is qualitative, right? Qualitative, just some subjective discussion. Whereas quantitative risk analysis is always supported by some kind of calculations, right? Numerical calculations, quantitative approach. There are many quantitative tools which are used for risk analysis. So, maybe I'll introduce today itself. So that is always based on some kind of numerical calculations, right? So whichever is suitable for kind of analysis you want to make, you can apply it. Qualitative risk analysis is the process of prioritizing risk for further analysis or action, determining each risk likelihood or probability of occurring, as well as rating its
Welcome
impact
to
on the
responsive
project.
voice.
The
Voice
scale
enable your
used is commonly ranked from 0 to 1. That is, if the likelihood of the risk happening in project is 0.5, then there is 50% chance it will occur. There is also an impact scale, which is measured from 1 to 5, with 5 being the most impact on the project. So, see, when I'm talking about the qualitative risk analysis, right, there it is not using any kind of quantitative techniques or tools or calculations as happens in the quantitative methods. But in the qualitative risk analysis also, uh, one can easily see that what is the probability that this risk will happen, right? Because when you are doing the risk analysis, it is definitely before the risk actually uh, happens, right? So before that, you are doing this analysis, but you are, you know, you are very close to that, but you got a hint that this may happen, right? At that stage, that's why I'm saying this risk analysis is also happens during the implementation stage, right? Again, let us come to that example I'm giving. Suppose you got a hint that government may change the tax structure of your input materials. You got an hint, right? You will get some hint. Once you are in that business, you will get an hint, right? So maybe you are finding that maybe after a couple of months, this kind of regulation will come, right? So this is the right time to have a qualitative risk analysis on this topic, right? So you will brainstorm, you will see, okay, what is the probability that this rate change will happen, right? So you are not certain, you are not sure. If you are sure, then the probability is 1, but it is somewhere between 0 to 1 that you are finding. So again, you will assume some value here based on your reliability of your source or things, other inputs. So you will say, okay, there is 75% chance that this change will happen. Now, if this happens, then what will be the impact of that on our project, right? If the material cost increases by this many percent, then what is the impact of that on our project? So from that, you will get a value which is something like a uh, impact on the project, and it can be measured from 1 to 5. Right? There are many such risks. Now you will prioritize your risks based on its impact value. Suppose some project, some risk is having higher priority because its impact value is much more than others. Then we'll give you the first priority to address it. Because it's not that at a particular time you have only one risk. There are more than one risk involved in a project. So these are all qualitative risk analysis. So you are making, you are involving the probability of that event that is going to happen, and what is the impact of that change if that happens on your project, right? Using a scale of 1 to 5. So that helps you to prioritize and then take corrective measures, right? So that is qualitative. Qualitative risk analysis is beneficial because one can focus mostly on high impact risks. That is what I said. So once you have ranked your risks, right, based on its impact value, so obviously you will start from the highest impact risk to address, and you will go down the list, for which plan out appropriate mitigation responses. Now coming to quantitative risk analysis. So as I said, here you have to measure and do some calculations, mathematical calculations, quantitative analysis to arrive at some conclusion, right? It is not subjective. It is very objective. It will give you a fixed value always, right? Whoever is conducting this analysis. Whereas in case of subjective, it may vary from person to person, group to group, because you have to make some assumptions, you have to make some uh, subjective decisions like what is the probability, what will be the impact. So it is not that precise compared to quantitative risk analysis. Okay, so quantitative risk analysis are numerical, mathematical, or statistical analysis of the effect of those identified risks on the overall project. This helps team leaders to make decisions with reduced uncertainty and supports the process of controlling risks. Quantitative risk counts the possible outcomes for the project and figures out the probability of still meeting project objectives. This helps with decision making, especially when there is uncertainty, and creates cost, schedule, or scope targets that are realistic. For example, okay, so these are the four quantitative risk analysis techniques which are popularly, being used by project managers to make some decisions uh, uh, when they are finding that there may be some risk involved in it. So the first one is EMV, that is expected monetary value. Then next one is event tree, and there is another analysis which is called decision tree, event tree and decision tree analysis. Then last two are purely financial tools, financial quantitative tools. They are very similar in nature. That is make or buy decision and break-even point. Okay, they are very similar. So these are some of the tools which are quantitative in nature, and I will say these tools assist the project manager in making a decision before some risk happens. So that way it helps, right? They are quantitative. But for all other uncertainties and risks, it is better to go for the qualitative analysis, because for all these quantitative analysis, you need data, right? You need the exact data. Then you can calculate. Whereas for qualitative analysis, you hardly need any data. It is just based on your maybe previous experience or maybe expertise, or maybe some consultancy services are providing you some certain inputs that this is the probability that this change will happen. So it is not that exact, or it is very subjective, as I said. Okay, so quantitative and qualitative risk analysis. So we'll discuss these quantitative analysis tools bit further. Okay, the first one to begin with is EMV, or expected monetary value, right? Techniques for risk analysis, expected monetary value. Actually, if you'll understand this tool, then maybe you will find it a bit difficult that how it is a kind of risk analysis tool. But you have to understand that in which context it has been used. Then you will understand, okay, it is for risk analysis only. So for any proposition, right, any alternative solution, if you can find what is the expected monetary value for that decision or that proposition, then maybe it is easy for you to select that proposition or that option which is having the minimum expected monetary value, right? Because see, always you will try to adopt a solution which is costing you the least, right? So that is the philosophy behind finding the expected monetary value. So higher the expected monetary value, the higher the risk involved, right? So it is always better to adopt the option or the route or the alternative strategy which is giving you the minimum, right? The minimum expected monetary value. So that is the thing. Okay, so EMB is a statistical technique in risk management used to quantify risks and calculate the contingency reserve. It calculates the average outcome of all future events that may or may not happen. Multiply the probability with the impact of the identified risk to get the EMB. It's very simple. If you can know the probability of that event that is going to happen, and if you multiply that with the monetary impact on your company, then that is giving you the EMB, right? But again, I will say, it is $1 million question to know what is the probability that this event will happen, isn't it? If you can know it beforehand, then it is the eighth wonder. Means how to know that what will happen tomorrow. What is the probability that let us say there will be a war between Russia, uh, which is may lead to the third world war. What is the probability? Can anyone tell? If you can certainly tell that there will be a war between Ukraine and Russia, then it is $1 million question. Same thing happens with each and every risk. What is the probability that there will be heavy rain? Heavy rain. What is the probability that the government is going to change this regulation? So people try, there are some ways people try to get these probabilities from various means, but whatever the means are, but they are not with certainty. You can say what is the probability, but you'll try to get the as close as possible to the actual probability. Then your calculation will be more close to the reality. So it is easy to say that you multiply the probability with the impact. Impact you can calculate, that will be very accurate, no problem. If the cost increase to this, then my impact on project will be this. That will be accurate. But what is the probability that the cost will increase to this? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. People try to get using some insiders. That used to happen before budget. There are many such things happen in financial world. People try to get inside informations, right? It is illegal, and people again try to do from finance ministry, from stock exchange, everything happens. Recently you might be knowing the news about NSE and what happened through some yogi and all that. So this is knowing that probability. That is $1 million question, as I said. So that probability value is $1 million question. So maybe that probability is something which is beyond the control of these departments and offices, like some natural calamities, right? No matter how much insider you have, you cannot get what is the probability that there will be an earthquake tomorrow. Nobody can predict. So apart from these natural calamities or other man-made kind of events and decisions, people try to get the probability so that they can be in a better position to handle their organization or make profits. So EMB here, as I'm saying, is just the multiplication of a probability and the impact. So we'll discuss on this because it's already 9:53. So we'll discuss on this in the next class. Do you have anything to ask on this today's class? Do you have any questions?